The other day I filmed a video for Patreon where I shared 10 inspiring art books from my studio bookshelf. I really enjoyed filming it. Books are a big part of my art practice, and so I thought it would be nice to choose 10 further books to share with you on YouTube. So we're going to take a look at these. There are actually 3 new ones here that I picked up in Waterstones the other day. I thought it would be fun to include those too. It was going to be all books that I'd previously used, but these ones are so lovely and so inspiring that I thought I'd include those as well. So let's get started and just have a look at these, and I'll tell you why I love them, why they inspire me, and how I use books in general in my art practice. Let's start with this gorgeous book, Imagine a Forest by Dinara Mirtalipova, Designs and Inspirations for Enchanting Folk Art. So I've had this book for probably about 4 or 5 years, I think. I remember getting it from a gallery in London. I think it was probably the Tate in their gift shop. They have an amazing gift and bookshop in the Tate galleries in London. And I saw this, and I already followed this artist on Instagram, so I loved her work. And I'm attracted to folk art in general, or folk art style artwork. You can probably see the influence of it in my work to a certain degree as well. And so I thought this just looked like a lovely book to have in the studio. I'll just show you the spine there and the back cover. It's all completely beautiful. Let's open it up. You can see the gorgeous end papers. I just love how decorative it is. It's just absolutely beautiful. I think we've missed a page actually. There you go. So this is one of those books where you can have it in the studio and just dip into it whenever you want a little bit of inspiration. As I said to my patrons, I have a lot of books, but I very rarely read them from cover to cover. More often than not, I will dip in and out of them. So this one starts with an introduction, so you get to see some of the objects she's painted, her materials, and she talks to you a little bit about her background and how she established herself as an artist. I love that there's a whole section on tools too. And by the way, I really love it when people illustrate art supplies. I've meant to have a go at this myself and I haven't done so yet. But yeah, it's always interesting to see as well the materials that other artists use. So it looks like she uses a lot of acrylic and gouache. Very lovely in her signature colour. She uses a lot of black and red, which is really nice. And I actually have recently bought a bright red acrylic ink so that I can have a go at doing some black and red artworks myself, which isn't something I would normally do, but I really want to try it and see. So she talks about colour palettes in this section. And then you get on to the different categories. So this one is flowers, foliage and insects. And as you can see, you do get these simple tutorials to show you how she goes about actually drawing a certain subject. I haven't copied any of these tutorials, by the way. I tend to use books like this rather than using them as a tutorial book. I will use them as ideas for colour palettes or subject matter or, I don't know, texture, pattern, shapes, that kind of thing. So just looking through a book like this can spark off something that you want to perhaps add to your own work, or maybe even encourage you to try something new. So she's got lots of flower variations. She shows you how she does the different flowers. And then there's a little section on trees here. So you've got some different styles of trees. Love this one with the birds in. And I really enjoy her use of a limited colour palette. I'm a big fan of limited colour palettes myself. I like a wide range of colours, but I like to only use a few colours in each artwork. So her work appeals to me on that level as well. So I'm just going to flick through these books quickly because we have 10 of them to get through. But there you go, she does little insects, little beetles here. And I love this repeating pattern as well. This is something that I've wanted to do for a while, is a repeating pattern. So you have birds and animals. Lots of different examples. Chickens. And I love this element of pattern in her work too. This is why I think I love folk art so much. Cute little foxes. Love the style of that fox. Lions. And then we go on to royalty and knights. Are these fairy tales and mythical creatures? So royalty and knights. What else have we got? Castles. Oh, they're lovely. Medieval scenes. Middle Eastern and Asian tales. So there's loads of inspiration in here. It's quite a big book. Gorgeous. This black, red, white, and then like an occasional other colour she'll put in. So here we have the use of browns and what looks like an ochre or something like that. It's very effective. She also paints on objects as well. So it shows you a little bit of that. People and homes. The little houses are very, very cute. That looks like a little... Oh, it is a gingerbread house. I thought it looked like a little gingerbread house. So household objects. Painting different little things you find around the house. Hearts, lettering. She covers a lot of different subjects, patterns. But all in all, just a gorgeous book. There's project ideas at the back here as well. I would definitely say this book is worth getting if, like me, you're a fan of folk art and you just want to maybe experiment with trying out a few different subjects. I actually would like to use this book more. I've tended to just dip into it to get a bit of like visual stimulation, a bit of inspiration for when I want to work, but I haven't actually kind of taken any of her specific ideas and kind of gone with those. It would be interesting to try some of these in my style. So yeah, that is a really beautiful book and one that I'm very glad I have on my studio bookshelf for those moments where I just need a bit of folk art inspiration. The second book we're going to look at is David Hockney, A Yorkshire Sketchbook. So this one is set out just like his sketchbooks, basically. You don't have any text, it's just images. You have a little introduction here. So I'm going to read this to you so you know what this book is all about. On visits to his family in Bridlington during the 1990s and while living there in the first decade of the new century, David Hockney painted the East Yorkshire landscape remembered from his youth. Although his passionate interest in new technologies led him to develop a virtuoso drawing technique on an iPad, he was also accompanied outdoors by the traditional sketchbook, an invaluable tool as he worked quickly to capture the changing light and fleeting effects of the weather. Executed in watercolour and ink, these panoramic scenes have the spatial complexity of finished paintings, the broad sweep of sky or road, the patchwork tapestry of land, yet convey the immediacy of Hockney's impressions. And as in the views down village streets and across kitchen tables that appear alongside them, his rooted and fond knowledge of the Yorkshire wolds is always clear. If you know the landscape there, the character of the sketches is unmistakable. If you don't, it will come to life in these pages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly flick through this. I'm going to add some music so you can just enjoy the images without me chatting over the top of them. I'm going to stop here and just say that this is inspiring me already. I have been wanting to take my watercolour paintings and make them a little bit more loose and immediate. And I want to do this in a sketchbook that I actually have beside me at the moment. It's a Stillman and Burn sketchbook, and I haven't really used it. I've kind of just tested different materials out on the first page, but I've been holding off because I wasn't sure what I wanted to use it for. And I decided the other day that I wanted to use it for mainly loose watercolours or loose neocolour drawings. And this is exactly what I mean. Just this impression of a garden with the different marks, the different patterns. I just love this. And I think that this book could be something that perhaps kind of not pushes me, encourages me to perhaps do that and just allow myself to paint like that. Because if I'm painting like that in a sketchbook, there's less pressure. I tried doing looser watercolour paintings in the summer and they weren't a huge success, for me at least. I didn't like them. And I kept trying and trying and trying. I talked about it a little bit on Instagram. I can't remember whether I talked about it on YouTube, but I've been wanting to go back and try something that I feel is more me, but is enjoying the looseness and the immediacy of watercolour. So this book is kind of like the perfect book if you want to become inspired in that way. So yeah, a really inspiring little book to dip into. As I say, there's no text in there, so it's just images. So you can just sort of immerse yourself in the landscapes of Yorkshire. And I love David Hockney's work anyway. He's one of my favourite artists. And I love these as much, I think, as the finished paintings. So I just love that energy they have. And they really do, in such a simple way, capture the landscape perfectly. And yeah, it makes me excited to experiment more with watercolour. So the next one is one that I picked up in Waterstones the other day. And it's actually a book that I had kind of wanted for a while. I have one of Matt Sewell's books called Owls, and I featured that one at the weekend on my Patreon, and I talked to them about that one and about how much I love his style and that there were other books in this series. Well, I happened to find this one in Waterstones in Reigate, so we just popped in on the off chance and there it was, and I thought it was meant to be. So I now have two in this series. Does it tell you on the back? No, it doesn't on this one. It did on my other one. The other ones in the series I think are Woodland birds and songbirds, I want to say. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was. But this one, Garden Birds, is a bird for every week of the year. But I just love Matt's style of illustrating. So we're going to have just a quick look at this one. There's a little introduction and then we get to the birds. So it's set out like his other book in that you have a little illustration of the bird and then you have a little bit about that particular bird, but they're kind of written very humorously. So it's not a serious bird book by any means, as you can probably tell. But his birds have so much character. I love that he's working in, I think it's almost exclusively, to me, it looks like watercolour and gouache. I don't know whether he does any digital work. These look looser actually. I would say these are looser in style than the Owl book, generally speaking. But they have such character. And when I was talking to my patrons about the Owl book, I was saying how sometimes I use books like this just to, not to copy the artist's style, because I don't want to work in a way that's too close to someone else's style. I've spent years developing my style now, so I always bear that in mind whenever I'm very much attracted to somebody else's style, not to try and mimic it. So, because sometimes that temptation is there. If you love someone else's style so much, you want to start kind of painting like them, or or at least kind of incorporating a lot of elements into your work of theirs. What I tend to do is I would dip into a book like this. Say, for example, if I wanted an idea, say I want to paint birds and I'm looking for an idea for the pose of the bird, the position it's in, or I'm looking for a colour combination that really inspires me. It also gives me an idea of how I can adapt what I'm seeing in reality. So say if I wanted to, for example, paint a chaffinch, I may be working from a reference photo, but I don't want my chaffinch to look like it's, I don't know, a completely realistic depiction of a chaffinch. It kind of helps me to see how other people depict birds and how they can push those boundaries of, I don't know how to put this, but like realism, I suppose. So they're not copying the bird exactly. They are very much adapting that bird to their style of work, although you could still recognise it as being that bird. So it kind of helps me with seeing how they do that. I hope I'm explaining that okay. But I just love the characters of these birds. That's a lovely one, the wood pigeon. I did a wood pigeon a few months ago, and actually is one of my favourite paintings I've ever done. And I think I should do more. Or give it a go, I think. I went a collared dove. I've seen these birds and I think they're so beautiful, and I would love to paint one of those as well. I was saying to my patrons the other day that I really like to use these books as well to see different patterns and different marks, just to get ideas for my own birds and the way of applying paint. It's just interesting to me to think of ways I can incorporate something I really like into my own work. See, I love the simplicity of this one. It doesn't have any patterning on that one, yet I love it. I tend to add a lot of patterns to my birds, and we're going to look at an artist in a bit where she does a similar thing to me, in that she will add lots of patterns and marks over the top of the watercolour. And Matt does that a little bit, but a lot of the time he's leaving these really looking fairly simple, and they're just so effective. So there you go. Let's have a quick look at a few more. But a really inspiring and gorgeous little book. I love the Owl book that I've had for quite a few years, and I was glad to find this one in Waterstones. So I'm sure that this one will become one of my favourites to look through as well. So the next book we're going to look at, because I just mentioned this artist briefly and I thought it would be good to do this one next, is Birds in Watercolour, Collage and Ink by Geninne de Zlatkis. It's a field guide to art techniques and observing in the wild. So this is a new book to me. I don't think it's a new book. I think it's been out for several years, but a friend sent it to me recently, and it's been so inspiring to look through this and have this in the studio. So I've loved Geninne's work and her birds for quite a few years now. But for some reason I'd never bought this book, and I think I should have done because it's really, really lovely. So we firstly have an introduction So you get to see her amazing studio space in New Mexico. And there's a little bit about her background and her art practice. Beautiful photography as well in this book. And a little bit about her love of birds. So there she is as a child with her yellow canary. So cute. So she talks about her studio space, her ways of working. I love this when you have an art book or sort of instructional art book that also has quite a lot about the artist's personal life or their home life and kind of behind the scenes in their studio and their inspirations and all of that. And so if you love that, this book is definitely the book for you. So she talks about the paint she uses, the brushes. I love her collection of what looks like FW acrylic ink there. So she talks about photographing nature. You can also obviously work from your photos, which is what I do a lot of the time as well when I go out walking. I just shoot a lot of photos with my phone camera, because they're so good these days, aren't they? And I often work from those. So her little birds, as you can see, are very detailed. So she puts a lot of patterns on the top of the watercolour, I think with acrylic ink, which is what I like to use as well. It's really good for just doing the fine details because it's fairly opaque and it's very free flowing, so you can do lots of little details with it. But it's interesting to see the different stages of her work. I love these kind of step by step, so you can see it gradually getting more and more detailed. I actually really love it at this stage as well. I think it looks beautiful. She's added all of the lovely detail there. I'll just flick through so you can see. Oh gosh, I love this page. I love looking at artists' palettes. So inspiring, and I love the fact that every artist sets out their palette differently. So she has some notes on watercolour, says which paper she uses. So she talks about ink as well and says black ink or acrylic is commonly used for adding details to paintings, but many years ago I discovered that white acrylic ink really makes the details stand out. I found this as well. I've yet to find a better paint for going over the top of my birds and my landscapes to add the details than white acrylic ink. It's just such a good addition if you're a watercolorist and you want to add highlights and details. Get yourself a bottle of De La Rowney FW acrylic ink. But this beautiful little bird with all of the details, just so lovely. So you see, just looking at how she works, the detail she adds, the colour palette she uses. Very inspiring book. I love that these ones are on wooden panels as well, which is interesting if she's using watercolour. Oh, it looks like she's using acrylic ink actually for those. That's beautiful because it looks like watercolour when it's used like that, yet she's painting on wood. I've never thought to use acrylic ink on wood like that. That could be an interesting thing for me to try actually. So that's how the little birds turned out. And she says, when I hung up the paintings, the bluebirds looked to me like they miss each other. I want to title the watercolour Thinking of You. Isn't that lovely? And they join up if you put them together as well. But yeah, this is full of lots of inspiring images and works in progress. So you can see her techniques and her process. And then you have at the back here, there were some pages where, gosh, there's so much to look at in these books. This video could go on forever, couldn't it? That's one of her classic pieces. I've seen this a lot. I love here how she's just used one colour. So she's just used black ink. Yeah, she's got so much detail and so much character into that little bird. So yeah, what I wanted to show you, I keep getting distracted with loads of other things. She's put some collage papers in the back of this book that you could cut out and use in your own paintings, mixed media works. They're gorgeous. There's no way I can cut this book up though, I have to say. I'd have to make my own, I think. But there you go. Loads of inspiration in there. An absolutely gorgeous book. And well worth it if you're into painting birds or you're into watercolour and you just want to see some different inspiring colour combinations and watercolour techniques and so on, and see how another artist works. This is a very good book to have. This book by Angela Harding, it's her new book, Wild Light, A Printmaker's Day and Night. This is one I picked up at Waterstones as well. I bought Dominic an Angela Harding book last year it's either for his birthday or for Christmas, I can't remember which, they're both very close together. And I just loved the way it was laid out. It had pictures of her studio and her working and pictures of like her surroundings as well as her actual artwork. This is gorgeous. Her books always feel really well produced, and so I was excited to see this one. I don't know exactly when this came out, but it's this year. It's very, very recent. I've only known about it recently. But yeah, again, I love to see the studios of other artists and how they work. There's Angela. I've been a fan of her work for years. So she talks to you a little bit about the techniques used in this book. Her studio space looks amazing. So it goes through, I think, the different times of the day. So first light, and there you can see, I guess, from her house looking down onto her studio at the bottom of the garden. Her surroundings. Her work is just so atmospheric and evocative of certain places or certain times. It gives me a really lovely feeling when I look at her work. Like, it reminds me of different walks I've been on, different scenes. It's very, very UK based. It's very English. I feel like I've seen these scenes myself. So then we go on to Sharp and Fresh. I mean, you could look at this book for hours. There's just so much, quite a lot of text, as well as these gorgeous images. London Fox, he's lovely. I love her coastal work as well. Evening Glow. I love how it's sort of interspersed with these gorgeous photographs of her surroundings, kind of showing the time of day or the season that inspired the work in that particular chapter. Fading Light. Something about this time of day where the light is fading and the moon is rising and the trees become silhouettes. When you look out across the fields, you see little twinkling lights of cottages in the distance. I just love that so much. It's one of my favourite times of the day. I love her buildings too, and her trees are fantastic. So Wakeful Darkness, have the gorgeous owl. And some very inspiring night scenes. Moths. Yeah, there's just something about her work that makes me feel cosy. Cosy and reassured. And I think we all need a bit of that, don't we? Moon Garden, that's a nice title. Her owls are lovely. The other night, while it was snowing, I actually was looking out of the window and I was really close to the window because I was trying to see whether it was still snowing outside, because we'd had a lot of snow and I wanted to see whether it was still coming down. So I kind of had my face pressed quite close to the window and I could hear an owl in the distance, and it was just the most amazing wintry, Christmassy sound and feeling. It was really lovely. So there's a little bit about Angela as well. And there you go, the different artworks featured in the book. So you can find them easily if you're looking for them. And this is the book, actually, A Year Unfolding, that I got for Dominic last year. Sorry if my hands look red and cold, by the way. It's because they are red and cold. It's very, very cold in the house. It's below 0 outside. When we woke up this morning, it was -5. And in the house it's very cold, even with the wood burner going, which is why I'm wearing my big furry sweater again. Anyway, let's go back to the books. So this one is a vintage book. It is very, very lovely. Has a little red top there, but it has white sides there, which is unusual, I think. Anyway, it's Birds of the Wayside and Woodland. A pocket guide. I love this cover. I was very attracted to the cover when I saw it in the secondhand bookshop. Now I think I got this one from the National Trust's Polesden Lacey, which is not that far from us. I think I got it about three or 4 years ago. It has 360 illustrations, including 300 in colour, and it's just a beautiful little book. Look, if I take off the dust jacket, look at this, got a lovely little illustration there and a sort of cloth cover. Love it. It's very delicate. I have to be very careful with it. But yeah, I have a small collection of vintage books in the studio as well. I can show you some more of them if you're interested at some other point. And I was talking to my patrons about this and saying that it's interesting to have vintage books as well as contemporary books, because you get a different style of illustration and therefore a different inspiration. So it's good to kind of immerse yourself, I think, in different styles, and vintage books are a good way of doing this, as well as being like just a little piece of history. There's something special because obviously they're pretty much all of them are out of print now, so they're real little treasures when you find them. And I like that this book has been around for so many years, and in fact I'm just looking at this, it says it was a prize awarded to J. Shepherd for good work in English Geography and History, Form 6, 1945. This book is older than my parents by a bit. It's older than Dominic's parents. This is incredible that this has been around longer than any of us have been around, and I find that quite something. I love the vintage illustrations because they tend to be very realistic and incredibly detailed, and you kind of just get a slightly different, I don't know, perspective, feel. There's a lot of text. I'm going to be very, very careful with it. Oh, what's that? So we have the names for the different parts of the bird. I'm just going to find you some of the illustrations if I can. There we go. I just love these vintage illustrations because they are really quite different to the illustrations that we tend to see these days. Beautiful, soft colours. But this book could be used, so I could take something like this, for example, and I could make it my own. I could recreate this in my style. So this is where these books come in really. And although not strictly speaking an art book, you'll notice that some of these books aren't art books as such, but they're books that definitely could inspire some art. These are lovely muted colours. But yeah, secondhand books are real little gems and definitely worth, I don't know, just definitely worth collecting a few of them, I think, for your studio if this kind of thing inspires you. I tend to get mine from, when you go to National Trust properties, they tend to have secondhand bookshops, so I'll always look around the bookshops there. I also get them from Oxfam or other charity shops. And sometimes there are just little independent bookshops. For example, there's one in Westleton in Suffolk that's in, I want to say it's in an old church. Is it in an old church, like an old Methodist church or something? But I love those kinds of places where you just go in and you can spend hours just looking through all of the books, and you'll often find some real little treasures in there. And yeah, just a really lovely little book, and also a really lovely reminder of a nice day out as well. The next one we're going to look at is How to Be a Wildflower by Katie Daisy. And this one is really inspiring for the hand lettering as well as the illustrations. So hand lettering is something that I want to do more of, and I've done a little bit, and I often think about doing more, and for some reason I get a bit intimidated, and then I don't know, I just end up not doing it. So it's good for me to have books like this. I do have quite a few books with hand lettering in actually, and I hope that one day it's gonna, I don't know, encourage me to just really have a go at it and be less scared of it. I don't know why I'm so scared of it. I guess just because it's something a little bit new, and I also think when I try to do the lettering, I try to make it look very neat, and it's good for me to see, for example, Katie's work, where she has allowed herself to, I don't know how to say this, like it obviously is fairly precise, you know, she's not just scrawling all over the page, but she is allowing the letters to look hand painted. I try to neaten everything too much. Is this making sense? And I actually really love the fact that when you're doing hand lettering, it should look hand lettered. But for some reason, it's a bit like with my work, I guess. It's like this desire to neaten things. And I talked a bit about this to my patrons, about my work being very precise, and how for years I've always felt like maybe I should loosen it up a bit. And then people tell me that that's what they love about my work, this preciseness, the detail, the kind of meticulous way that I paint. So we all have our own style, and I think we just have to embrace it. But sometimes it can stop us from doing certain things that we want to do. So I'm trying to find that balance where I keep my style but still allow myself to be a little bit more loose when I need to be. I guess that's how I would put it. But I really want to have a go at more hand lettering. I am starting to gradually launch a range of illustrated goods in my shop, and hand lettering is something that I want to do on some of these goods. So I'm hoping that I will be able to allow myself to do that. But yeah, it's about basically looking at nature and just drawing inspiration from it, really. So I love her style. I'm just going to quickly flick through so you can see, and different ways you can enjoy nature, like taking a full moon hike, let it light your path. It's a lovely moon painting actually. Walking with the trees. Setting up camp on the shore. And there are some of her birds as well. Really beautiful style. Lovely colours as well. And I love how she does this with the hand lettering. where it starts with one colour and then gradually becomes another. So there are some flowers and clouds, lots of nature motifs that you can draw inspiration from. And I guess it kind of encourages you to really look when you're out on a walk and really take in what you're seeing, and make artwork inspired by that. So lovely little book. I have a feeling I got this one from an actual bookshop rather than online. But yeah, a really lovely one to just have in the studio to dip into. So this is the third one that I bought from Waterstones the other day. I bought 3 books, and I had the other 2 in my hand when I came to this one. And Dominic has the original, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse book by Charlie Mackesy. And it is beautiful. The illustrations are just lovely. This one is the animated story. And this was actually half price at Waterstones at the moment. So it should have been £20 and was £10. And again, I love this hand lettering. It's just gorgeous. But I found the illustrations really inspiring. Specifically, we can find some of the landscapes. So I like that some of the landscapes in this were looking down from above, which is something I rarely do in my landscapes. And I like the idea of perhaps doing something like this, where you get like a bird's eye view, or say you're on top of a hill and you're looking down across the valley. See, again, we're up above. The trees are beautiful too. And this little boy looks a bit like Dominic did when he was little, which is kind of cute. I love his trees, they're gorgeous. Got the lovely fox as well. But yeah, these night scenes, I love this. The little fox. Really beautiful and very evocative. Gosh, our landscape looks a bit like that at the moment. The moon was rising the other night over a snowy landscape. It did actually look quite like that. But yeah, the landscapes in here were what was really inspiring me. Like here again, where you have this flock of birds over the winter landscape. It's so funny because when I filmed the video for my patrons the other day of the other 10 books, I was talking about how there's something about a flock of birds over a winter landscape that just gives me such a lovely feeling. Like all of the cozy, lovely, calm, I don't know, it's hard to describe it in words, but do you know what I mean? It makes me feel good to see it. It makes me feel happy. And there's something nostalgic about it as well. So yeah, just a lovely book just to, again, dip into if you don't want to read the entire story, and you can just take elements of that. I love the lighting. It's kind of very atmospheric light. Yeah, take elements of it, and perhaps it could inspire something in your own work. But it is just such a magical story and very touching. And this is a lovely book. So I'm glad I found that the other day. We're on to the final 2 books now. So this little book, the Drawing Ideas book. I have the Watercolour Ideas book, which I shared with my patrons, and I told them about this one as well, but they didn't get to see it. So I'm going to share this one with you. And so these little books are very good to have in the studio because they give you just different ideas, different starting points. If you're needing a bit of creative inspiration or you want to get out of a creative block. So it talks about different mediums and it gives you different inspirations. So they're kind of all mixed in. Quick portraits, people and pattern. abstracting forms, drawing as meditation, drawing with thread. I always love this when people embroider and it looks like a painting. Storyboarding, marker pens. So yeah, throughout it's kind of mixing in inspiration, so giving you things to draw, subject ideas, and also giving you different techniques and different materials. So yeah, I'm going to flick through very quickly here. Coloured ink. What was that one? Experiment with marker pens. And so it tells you a little bit about how you can use them. I love that one. I love this sort of scribbly type of style. The texture that pencil gives, I really enjoy. I love doing that in my own work with pencil actually. Drawing the city, still life. So there, just lots of different ideas. Great little inexpensive books, and they have a series of them. And they're good to keep on your bookshelf in the studio, just to kind of get you out of a creative block really, or just to try something new. And finally we have another vintage book, The Birds of Britain by James Fisher. So this is from a series called Britain in Pictures. I believe Dominic told me that his dad had a whole set of these. You can see I paid £3 for it. I'm trying to remember where I got this one actually. I can't remember whether I got this from Oxfam perhaps. But the illustrations in this one are just beautiful. It's a funny bird. They're really lovely. I kind of feel like this book could inspire a whole series on its own. The little owls there in their nest. So lovely detailed black and white illustrations. And some gorgeous colour ones too. Really striking in style. When was this book published? Does it say? Now it's in Roman numerals, I would say. Is this 1942? I think it might be. So it would have been during the Second World War. Oh, this is lovely. The robin. It's a wood engraving from 1797. I don't know, it could be a scene from today, really. Isn't that amazing? But yeah, another real little gem that I'm going to take very good care of. The red grouse, wonderful colours. Fantastic colour palette there. So there we go. It's a little quick flick through that one because I think this video is going to be very long. So I hope you've seen something here in this video that has inspired you, whether it's to add to your own collection or just, I don't know, to have a look at your books in general and just really use them in your art practice. I feel like the internet is great for looking up certain images, but there's just something about holding a book in your hand and just sitting there and really absorbing yourself in it. And I feel like, especially with the vintage books, you can get ideas that maybe are not the ideas that you see everywhere, that everyone is using. So it's just something a little bit different to give you a slightly different perspective. Anyway, I'm going to say goodbye now. Take care, everyone. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please consider doing so. Obviously it's free and you'll be notified when I post a new video. To do that, by the way, you need to just click the little bell icon and then YouTube will let you know when I've next got a video up. Thank you if you decide to do that. take care everyone, and I'll be back soon with another video. I think it's going to be a watercolour one. So I'll see you then. Okay, bye for now.